Hello and welcome to the Indie Bandits podcast episode 3. I'm Joe and I'll be joined by Jimmy and Archie, and we'll be talking about games such as Anodyne 2, Return to Dust, Mutazione and Creature in the Well. Let's have a chat about the games we've been playing.
I'll go first.
So what you've been playing this month, Archie?
I got a... bloody hell, what was it called again? Anodyne 2, Return to Dust. This might be a short review, like, if I'm being honest, a short discussion. Yeah, it's Anodyne 2. It's made by two people from... Hang on, let me get this company name back up, because I'm going to say this incorrectly. Analgesic product... Analgesic? Analgesic Productions, LLs.
Yeah, analgesic's a word.
What does analgesic mean?
It means painkiller.
Ah, never heard that.
So, who makes the game, Archie?
Well, analgesic, as we've just discussed.
Analgesic.
Analgesic, essentially made by two guys, and it's a... How do you describe this game? It's a very unusual game. It looks like they've just thrown, like, you know, they've got all these creative ideas, and they've tried to throw them into this singular game. It's called Anodyne 2, but when you start up the game, it tells you it's in no way related to the first game. Completely new story, new characters, so you don't need to play the first one if you want to enjoy this one. And it's a mixture between kind of like traditional, like old school N64 3D games, but they've got the benefit of having like HD graphics now, so it's like N64 3D games with a little bit of a sharper edge to them, I'd say. And next to some like 2D, more classic like SNES kind of style gameplay, and these kind of two things, I guess, work in tandem with one another. And the idea of the game is Dust, Return to Dust. You'll love this game, Joe. Dust is all over the place. Has come over this land, and you Nova, who's like this humanoid character, who's got this dust is infecting people, and you've got to go into people and clear them of this dust that's making them go a little bit doolally. And the game is just kind of okay.
So but you said you got to clear people of dust.
You've got to clear people of
like
dust.
Vacuuming simulator.
No, it's not.
Like,
no, it's like
like, how do you clear these people of dust?
Right,
What does that even mean?
Exactly. So you have this kind of hub world, which is where the N64 3D bit comes in. That's your hub world. Has this old school, old low poly kind of look to it. You talk to characters and they'll say something to you. And so many of these characters will essentially be the lovers of the game. When you talk to them, you have the option to kind of like go inside them either physically or into their mind. And when you go inside them, it kind of turns into more of an old school like Zelda game. And when you're in there, you're essentially defeating the enemies and like sucking up bits of dust. And once you've done that, that's essentially them being cleared of this dust-like plague. Each level just puts you forward, and you can do each level in any order you want. So there's different tiers to the hub, and those levels can be done in any order, but you can't go to the next hub until you've done all the levels in that area.
So it's like multiple Super Mario Land 2s, if you remember that on the Game Boy, where they had this big world map where you could just take on every individual. There were multiple like mini worlds within the map. Do you
no, you've got to do them in
linear.
No, I didn't play Mario Land 2, but you've got to do them in a linear order. So there's level 1, there's hub 1, then once you've done hub 1, you go to hub 2, and what I saw from there, it seemed to split off. But the problem with this game is, right, it has all these different things that I quite like. I like the old school, like, Zelda games enough, like, they're entertaining enough. I'm not a big fan of the 3D Zelda games, but I love 3D kind of old N64 platform games, like Mario and Banjo-Kazooie and whatever. And I just feel like this game just doesn't tie any of these things together, like, that well. And I don't want to be too cruel on the devs, because I know, like, I looked at this game just to make sure, like, I wasn't misinterpreting how to play it or something like that, and loads of people seem to love it. And I think for me, it's just something that I didn't find personally very appealing. I played it for like an hour or so when I first had to go, and I wasn't like feeling it like at all. I wasn't liking the world, I wasn't liking the levels, I wasn't really I just wasn't having fun. I thought, oh, whatever, like, so I came off it, and I went and played it a couple of days after. I just started the game fresh again with like a totally fresh mind. and I played past the point where I got previously, and I thought I'd been playing for like 3-4 hours, but I'd only been on for like 40 minutes, so I clearly wasn't enjoying myself when I was playing this. And it's a shame because there is a lot of like quirkiness to it, but it's like there's so many like different ideas. Like before you go into one of these corridors to do one of the levels, there's like a rhythm game which seems a bit just like pointlessly put in there because maybe the guys like rhythm games, and there's no kind of overall
direction.
Yeah, not so much direction, but kind of like the art style doesn't really like have. I guess the art style is it's just
trying to
everything.
Be too many different types of games. Trying to.
I think it's trying to wear too many hats.
Yeah.
A jack of all trades.
And it's kind of just doing each of them just okayly, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like the 3D hub stuff is just like they're big like environments, but there's so little to do in them. And it does that really annoying thing that PS1 3D games did, where there's so much like empty space, and you can turn into a car to get around them. But it feels like you only turn into a car for the sake because they've made everything too big. And traveling from A to B, like it's not interesting. There's not much to do, and there's only so many characters you can talk to out of all the characters that are put there.
Just feels like a really empty land, and
yeah, it does. Like. And it does look quirky when you see kind of like low resolution like photographic textures placed onto like really low polys, and you get that nostalgia trip of that. But all the character designs just seem like a hodgepodge of just doodles. There's nothing cohesive between any of that. Like when you go into the characters' minds, they're kind of reflective of the type of the character is. So there's one guy who's got this big tongue for some odd reason. So everything in the mind of that character is based around like puzzles with his tongue, but like, and there's one who is writing a story by on their bedside, so everything inside their mind is like heaps of paper and stuff. But that's kind of there's not much to say about it really. I wasn't feeling it.
What genre is it? Like what if I know you said it's a big hodgepodge, but what's the overriding like gameplay?
Platformer.
No, it's
3D platformer.
No.
So there's very little platforming in it. So it's I guess it's like an adventure game. You'd have to call it.
Yeah, like
but what is the gameplay mechanics? Like, what do you actually do? Do you like swing swords? Do you attack things?
You suck things up with your Hoover.
Is there actually a Hoover?
Yeah, there is.
So it is a virtual Hoover simulator
I
game,
guess it is to a point.
But you simulate. So I guess it's like a Luigi's Mansion kind of thing.
No,
I mean,
not really.
No,
no. You know, old Zelda, the first ever Zelda game, like whatever it's called, like
the NES one.
Yeah. It's
so the top down like slash things and
it's 2D Zelda with a Hoover, but the
but it's 3D.
No, it's 2D. Like these bits are 2D, like.
All right, so the worlds within people where you're sucking up dust is 2D and Zelda-esque,
yes.
But the hub world is 3D and sort of Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's for me to understand it. You basically run around a sort of 64-bit 3D polygonal world that's far too big for purpose, and then you go into top-down 2D worlds to suck up dust.
Well, suck up dust and creatures, but essentially yes.
Selling this game to me, I'll tell you.
It doesn't. Yeah, if you get me, it doesn't sound. When you describe it like that, it doesn't sound amazing. And from what you've been saying, it doesn't sound that you're very sold on it either.
No, I'm not.
So where does the challenge come in this?
So the challenge would like. In traditional, in the 2D bits, which are essentially the levels, like, they're just, like, basic puzzles, and there's enemies, and they can attack you, and they can kill you. And each of those 2D segments has its own boss. But from what I saw, maybe this changed later on in the game, all the bosses look like exactly the same. But I'll forgive that, since 2 people made this game. I'll throw it out there, I didn't finish this game, I think I played about half of it. But I never, ever had the desire to go back and play any more of it.
Right.
Like, it was hard enough playing 3 hours, and I just felt like I just don't really want to play this game. Like, I'm not feeling it, and it's not because it's bad. It's just not something I'm enjoying, if you know what I mean. No bugs. There's no problems with that. Technically, it's sound. Just for me, for my tastes and what I like, it just wasn't meeting any of those things.
What would your solution be, or your like overriding feedback?
I just focus and more consistency. Archie's done.
James, you've been playing Mutazione this month, so tell me what you think. Is it better than Anodyne 2 Return to Dust?
Well, I think I'm going to be more positive about this than about that, but this is the first of the games that I've played which I haven't quite enjoyed that much. So it's an odd one, this, because I think it's one of those games that I think you're either going to love it or you're not going to understand how it's a game.
Is it another text game like?
No, not entirely. There are elements of gameplay in this. It's a point and click.
Narrative heavy.
Yeah, it's very narrative heavy. You talk to a lot of people. There's a few fetch quest elements to it as well, which aren't particularly exciting. And then it sort of turns into what I would loosely call a farming simulator, where you're basically growing plants. So essentially, this is a game that is very much an experience more than a game, if that is the right way of describing it. It looks great. It's got a charm to it. The characters and the style is very offbeat. It's very different and quirky. Mutazione is an island which is inhabited by mutants, and you play a girl called Kai, who's visiting the island to meet her grandfather for the first time. When you get there, you find out that he's fallen ill, and he is the shaman and the gardener of this island. So eventually the story, it gets to the point where you are taking over your grandfather's role and you are restoring the gardens on the island to their former glory, and everything's intrinsically linked. The health and the well-being of all the people on the island are linked to how well the nature on the island is doing, and the gardens, and everything's linked. It's obviously trying to say something on several sort of deep levels.
Is one of them environmentalism?
It's a little bit of that. It's not like on the nose or anything. It's just clearly, these things are all linked, and it's an experience to be savored and enjoyed, I would say, rather than a game to be completed. It's got some really nice elements to it. It's got a very nice style to it. There's a lot of positives, but much like Archie and Anodyne, this isn't a game for me. This is not something that I would go out and play, because it's just not. It's not something that I would typically pick up and really sink a lot of time into or enjoy. But I can fully understand why this gets the reviews it gets, and why some people find it extremely enjoyable. It's a very relaxing game. It's got a very deliberately slow pace, and yeah, it's a game where you're not trying to beat anything. You're just trying to do something, and do something in a world that is very sort of quirky and interesting and quaint, I guess is a good word for the aesthetic and the style.
So is there any challenge to it at all, or is it one of these games that sort of like plods along and the narrative progresses, but there's no real fail state, and what you're really doing is just, I don't want to say interactive film in a sense, but if you get me, like the story will continue with minimal input from the player, and the experience exists, so that basically it's like you're reading a book or watching a film, but you're also sort of involved at the like bare minimal level.
Yeah.
Have I missed the boat?
No, it's that you could not complete this game. Let's put that. If you sat there and played the game for the time that it required you to complete the game, you'd complete the game. It's not difficult. There are certain things that you can sort of figure out through the game, like the different plants have different ways that you can grow them. There are skills you can learn to help certain plants and gardens grow faster. There are different elements like that where, as you progress through the game, you learn more and therefore become more competent at the gardening aspect. But
right.
I didn't feel like any of those things were exceptionally difficult to learn. there was no sense of like, oh, I've learned that, that's an achievement. It was like, actually, that I assume is something everyone would learn through just having put this amount of time into the game.
Yeah, sooner or later you're going to
everyone is going
achieve
to learn
these skills.
This. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's one of those games as well where you can complete it just by doing the tasks and never speaking to anybody else. So there's a lot of additional world building, and it's quite fun to go and have conversations with all the inhabitants of the island. But there's absolutely no game reason to do it. It doesn't add anything. It doesn't make the game easier to complete or harder to complete by not talking to anybody else other than the people that you need to talk to actually complete the quest.
It's all. Oh, what's the word for it? It's all color. It's all flavor. It's all.
Yes.
It's all spice. If you get me,
Yeah.
the talking to these players is world building. It's non-essential. It's.
It
You can
fleshes it out.
if you want to go out and exactly. If you want to go and complete the game, then you can do. If you couldn't give two shits what anyone on the island of Mutazione has to say, you can ignore them all and just go grow your plants and crack on with it.
Yeah, but I would say this is not a game for someone who has that attitude towards it. This is a game for someone who wants to put maybe 7 to 10 hours into an experience and enjoy all of it. I would not recommend playing this game if you're not going to go around and talk to everybody, because there's lots of little stories going on. There's little reasons why this mutant is wanting to do what he's doing and why these 3 or 4 mutants are trying to do what they're doing. And that is, I would say, doing all that stuff is just as much the point of the game as the actual main quest.
I've heard it dubbed as a digital soap opera.
Yes, there's a lot of gossip in it between all the people on the island, and it, if you want to just do that and spend, as I say, a number of hours just basically seeing who these people are and being a part of an interactive story, then it's a really good game for that. But if you're someone who wants a game where you've got a challenge and quests to complete and things to unlock and a game to actually beat, this is definitely not the game. And if you play the game just to do the main quest, you're missing out on the point of this game, I think. So,
what's the style of the writing like? Is it like quirky or is it like serious?
It's a mix, I would say.
Okay.
It's funny sometimes. It's not like slapstick, but it's funny. It has a serious element to it as well. I mean, when you turn up there, your grandfather is not in good health, and the island has become all the gardens and everything are not in a particularly nice state. So your job there is to kind of bring everything back, and by restoring the island, you're sort of restoring you're uplifting everybody on the island who's maybe become a little bit bitter as well, and it's a
disenchanted.
Yeah, it's an odd game, and I say game, maybe there's a new word for this sort of thing, because it's not really a game, and I don't mean any disrespect by
It's a visual novel
or negativity. Yeah, but it's not that though. It's got more to it than that.
Okay.
There is a bit of game in it, in the whole gardening thing. That is a game. It's just, I don't know. It's a very it's the first game I think I've ever played where the objective to get to the end of the game and beat the game is not the point of playing the game.
Okay.
It's odd in that respect, but kind of quirky. But it's just, as I say, not really for me.
Maybe this is more of a game that would be suited to you, Archie, because I know you like your walking simulators and games like that where player input isn't at a premium, or not at a premium. It's not essential.
It's not a game where the enjoyment comes out of the challenge of the game. It's a game where the enjoyment comes out of having the experience. These people have obviously put a lot of effort into the design of it and the story in the background and everything. If you're going to play this game and not engage with all of that, it's not worth your time. But if you are someone who wants to basically, it's a very relaxing game, it's a very chilled out game. If you want to play a game that's going to take a few hours, it's going to be relaxing, it's going to be enjoying, and you don't really ever have to have an intense moment in it, then pick it up and play it, because you will enjoy it. Just for me, when I'm playing a game, that's very rarely, if ever, what I'm after from a game. So it isn't for me. But I appreciate all the good things about it.
But would you recommend it though, James? Like, I know you're not the biggest fan of it, but
No, well, if
Recommend it to Archie.
recommend it to me, I'll play it.
100%, there's an audience and a type of person who would absolutely love this game. Absolutely love it. I think it's really
Do you think I would?
well. Yes, I think you probably would. It's really well put together. It's sort of, it does very well what it wants to do. You know, it's not like the one Archie was saying that the game didn't really know what it wanted to be. This one knows exactly what it wants to be and sort of doubles down on it, really. And whilst it's not necessarily for me, it is a really well put together game, and I think I can understand why it's so highly rated. Let's put it that way.
Anyway, you're up next, Drew.
So this month I've been playing Creature in the Well, which is a game where you sort of play pinball, but it's not pinball. It's like hack and slash.
All right.
So it's a weird mix of genres and mechanics. But I'll start right off by saying I think it does it better than what Anodyne 2 does, based on what Archie was talking about this. This is a game where its sole purpose is to combine said mechanics and create something new with it, rather than just drawing on inspiration from all these things that the devs maybe liked. So the idea is you are this automaton, I guess, robot type thing, and there is a massive sandstorm that surrounds this village, and within this village there is this huge machine built into the side of a mountain that you go into to try and fix. And without too many spoilers, this machine was clearly designed to not only sort of, it seems that it was designed to power the village, but also control the sandstorm that ravages this village constantly, that stops all its residents from leaving.
Right.
So in order to restore this machine, you go room by room, and you basically hit spheres into other things, and when the spheres collide with other things, it adds like electricity or power to them. And basically they're just like mini pinball tables. So you just hit these balls into things, and when they hit them, then they get powered up, and then when you've got enough power, you can use that power to open new doors. And that's sort of the gameplay loop. So you have one button to hit the balls and charge them up, and you have another button to hit the balls and propel them in a given direction.
So is it a pinball game?
It's not a pinball game. It's a hack and slash game that sort of plays out like pinball. So you don't have flippers, you don't have pinball tables. Imagine if Link from Zelda walked into a room and there was all these spheres bouncing around, and when he hit them with his sword, he had to hit them into certain targets.
Right.
That's the way to do it. So you are this robot type thing, and you basically hit these balls a few times, twat them a few times, and they build up energy. And then you hit the button to propel them in a given direction, and you're trying to hit them off certain targets. A bit like a shooting gallery, but the balls then ping off certain things, so you've got to like plan your shots. It's got this kind of pool, pinball, kind of, bouncing balls going everywhere, hitting things, kind of gameplay to it. But also, sometimes the balls hit off things that imbue them with like power that causes you damage, so then you've got to either dodge the balls or deflect them, and it's kind of like dangerous tennis against the wall or dangerous squash.
Right, okay.
And because the way it plays out is, so at first obviously it starts you off easy and you've just got to hit the targets, and you plod on through level by level, which are individual rooms. So you go room to room, hit some orbs, charge them up, hit them off bumpers and walls and panels and all these various paraphernalia, which once they've got a certain level of charge are either disabled or activated or whatever. And once you've done them all and hit all the targets that you need to hit, that room is over and you have the charge to go unlock the door, and the door says, I need X amount of charge to open. You've collected X charge. Off you go, open the door. Another room, another table, I guess, if you want to continue the pinball analogy. Later on, these there are hazards. So there are like cannons that fire at you, and they fire spheres that are a different color. And I think they're like on fire, or that they're red at least. And if these hit you, they hurt you. So in that case, you have two options: dodge them or hit them to charge them up or deflect them, basically. So the challenge comes from, in some cases, you've got to hit the right targets. In some cases, you've got to hit the right targets in another order, and hitting the wrong target in the wrong order will reset the whole mechanism. In other cases, you could be losing health because if you hit a certain mechanism, it will change the orb into a different color, and that will come back at you and hurt you.
What's the point of the game? Like, what are you trying to do?
You're trying to restore this machine built into the side of the mountain.
Charge up the electricity for all that.
Basically, each room is like the level, and there's worlds that are like different parts of the machine, and within those worlds there are different rooms. And you go room to room, and at the end of those, you fight the creature in the well, which plays out very much like any other room, except there's these two big gross hands, like reaching around the side of the the table, if you will. And the idea is this machine was built, and the creature in the well is like, fuck that, no, don't fancy it, it'll never work, or something. The creature's basically just a bit of a dick.
Right.
And he's like your antagonist in this whole thing. So when you first enter, there's the creature, and the creature is like, I told them it would never work, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. And at the end of each world, there's a little like mini fight with the creature, which still plays out the same as any other level. You hit the orbs and into certain targets, but whilst you're doing it, the creature is like throwing projectiles at you, which you can bat away by hitting them with the orbs. So with all the balls pinging around and the whole pinball thing, it turns into a sort of like a bullet hell type game as well. So it's kind of, in that respect, it's kind of cool. So it starts off and it's like, it's kind of this top-down thing. It's sort of Zelda in this whole like swinging the sword and you just hit stuff and cool, it gets destroyed. And then the stuff starts coming back. You're like, oh, cool, it's dodged the stuff. That's nice. And then you're like, oh, now there's like tons of stuff on screen pinging around, and the creature's throwing stuff at me. The balls are pinging around. Sometimes the balls are going to hurt me. Sometimes they're going to bounce off me and they're not going to do any damage. And you're looking at all these different things. So it's got a nice challenge to it.
Mm-hmm. What about?
And there's some like really nice challenging aspects to it as well. So,
but you enjoyed it, yeah?
I am enjoying it, but it does get quite repetitive. As I said, there's a button to slash the orbs to charge them up, and there's a button to like strike them in a given direction. So there's those two buttons, and a dash button, which is also your like sort of dodge button. But basically, all this boils down to is you sort of hit square to continually hit the orbs, and then you hit triangle to fire them off in a direction, and then they come back to you and you do it again.
Right.
And between that, so it's a lot of square, triangle, square, triangle, it's depending on your controller configuration. I'm using a PS4 controller, obviously, but it's one button to charge up the orbs, it's one button to fire them off, then you like wait for the orbs to come back to you, or you run into their path to do that again. And you sort of just do that again and again for every challenge. And the difference in the challenge is which direction you fire the orbs off into, based on what you're sort of hitting. So it gets repetitive.
Okay. So it's a negative repetitive. It's not like it's doing the same thing again, but the same thing again is still quite enjoyable.
It's enjoyable, but I couldn't. It's not that I'm getting bored. There is just a limit to how long that can be enjoyable for.
All right.
So if you get me, this is not a game you can sit. There's not a game you could sit and play for 4 hours in one stint.
Right.
It's too repetitive to play in long sessions. It is very enjoyable when you play it, but you have to be very careful about how long you play it. I think like the worlds are a good size, so play through a world and then leave it. Don't play 2 worlds in one sitting. Or I'm calling them worlds, but they're parts of the machine. So you go through all the rooms in a given part of the machine, and then you reactivate said part of the machine, which normally leads to new parts of the machine being unlocked for you to access. But what I would say is, at that point, turn it off and go back to it later.
Right.
Because I feel like 2 worlds or 2 areas might stretch your patience for this type of gameplay. And you're like, yeah, I've been doing this a long time now. But again, like a pinball table, I don't know anyone who could sit and play pinball for like 4 hours on a stint. Like you could probably play it 10, 15 minutes, half an hour. It's that kind of thing. Like there's only so much pressing 2 buttons can do for you. So it's very enjoyable, but also it gets repetitive very quickly.
Artistically, it looks very nice.
I was going to say, what about the style?
It looks amazing. It looks amazing. It has this really cool, like, high contrast visual to it that makes it look like I don't know what you'd call it, like an action comic, or how would you describe it? So the visual it's very drastic contrasts.
It's all flat shaded.
It's all flat. I didn't know what. I think in the review I called it, like I said, it was reminiscent of cell shading, but yeah, it's all flat shaded. It's all flat shaded. It's all very dynamic. It looks very cool, and it's very. It just looks cool. Like that's the way I describe it. It has this cool visual style. It's not trying to be cutesy, but it's not trying to be like really artsy fartsy either. It's really nice. It's just a cool, nice style, and once all the like balls are pinged around and everything, it's like videos of it will look cool. Any footage of this game is gonna look awesome. Like there's a lot of nice visual effects going on. That there's a lot of cool lighting. As I said, it's like really high contrast, so the darks are like really, really black. There's no like sort of like in the shadow area. It's like fully black or bright glowing orbs that are being twatted all over the screen and causing like not explosions but like sparks and all these cool visual effects. So it's very visually, it's very engaging, which is sort of what is a large part of the draw, whilst your thumbs are hitting one of 2 buttons, or maybe 3, and it looks really cool. And in addition to all the nice visuals, it does have a nice amount of narrative. Now I know like yous have both played sort of seemingly narrative heavy games. This is a game where you can ignore the narrative, but it adds to it. The game itself is enjoyable, and the narrative will keep you going. At least that's the way I put it in the review. When it gets repetitive, there is a little hub outside of the well or the mountain that you can go and see, and it's where you upgrade, and there's locals, and a lot of the shops are not a lot of the buildings are like closed off because people are scared of the sandstorm and stuff. But as you walk past, there's little dialogue boxes pop up and say, what's that robot doing out there, yada yada yada. There's a nice bit of world building. The creature even speaks to you as well. It's an interesting world to be in, which helps a lot when the gameplay gets a little overly repetitive.
Okay, would you recommend it then?
Yeah, definitely.
It sounds like it's pretty accessible to most who want like a quick go on a game.
It's a game with good gameplay, which seems to have been the main complaint of this episode thus far, that we've had games that don't really have much in terms of gameplay. This game knows exactly what it wanted to do. It's something new and it's something innovative.
Okay.
And it's done it. And it's done it well. Now, I'm not going to say this game is going to spark a whole new genre of pinball-based hack and slashers. I saw the word pin brawler.
That's a good one. Very nice.
There's one thing the gaming community is great at. It's coming up with terms like that.
But I don't think this is going to spark a whole new genre of games as a one-off. I think it's nice. it's cool taking the hack and slash genre in a different way. There's a lot of mindless button mashing, but it's kind of nice that this mindless button mashing has an aim feature involved in it rather than just sort of aiming at a baddie. It's where, you know, it's got this kind of like almost sport game aspect to it.
Yeah.
So obviously, like any game, it's not going to be for everyone. But I think there's a wider appeal to it than the games you played.
Mm-hmm.
Both years, actually. Mm-hmm. The games you played seem to be very niche. This one seems much more accessible. But again, all the levels are very small. It's a screen by screen basis of levels, which I believe it automatically saves screen by screen anyway. So in that case, you can just pick it up. You could literally pick it up and play one screen of it and then go, yeah, that's me done. Mm-hmm. But if you want to play longer, you can. But it's one of these things where, you know, whatever point you get sick of it, you can just put it down.
Yeah.
And there's no consequence to doing so.
Oh well, sounds like probably the most positive of the three. Although, as I say, I do caveat my review as it literally just being my preference. The game itself is actually very good.
Well, I think we should do our pick of the podcast, as Archie called it. Let's see if this month he can get the right one instead of listening to what we say and then ignoring it. Last month you decided to ignore everything we said and go rogue and pick your own pick of the podcast.
I'm going to do it this week as well. It's Anodyne 2, obviously. No, it seems like Creature in the Well is probably, you know, since me and James seem very lukewarm on our own choices, I would definitely say, for me at least, I actually would rather play Creature in the Well than, what is it, Mutazione?
And Jimmy, are you going to give Anodyne a punt?
I'm not, no. I'm going to go down Creature in the Well is what I would have probably picked. As I said, I feel harsh saying it because there's clearly so much effort and it's such a well-designed and well-put-together game, Mutazione, but it's just not my type of game.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Bandits podcast. If you'd like to find out more about indie games, check out our website, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channel.